This is Josh from Cattle Decapitation, and you're listening to The Dan Chan Show.
Hey, Josh, how are you, mate?
I'm doing very good.
In sunny Germany. I didn't know you'd moved to Germany. How long have you been in Europe for?
The past, in Europe proper for the past, probably, almost a couple of years, a little over that. And then in Germany since the beginning of February.
Right, okay.
So,
do you enjoy it there?
Yeah, I got here at the most beautiful time of year for Berlin. So,
what took you to Berlin?
It really, I was in Belgrade before. I was fine there, but my gal is in a post-grad screenwriting program that is epicentered in Berlin, and she'd lived here years previous, prior to the pandemic and everything. So both for her industry and this program being super prestigious to get into and a once in a lifetime kind of thing, the decision was kind of made as long as I'm near a decent, reliable airport to do cattle business, let's do that. So, that was the idealistic original sort of idea. Here we are, so, it's fine. But then there's all that sort of German bureaucratic stuff to deal with as far as actually living here legally.
Oh, I can believe it. I thought you said German bureaucratic then. I thought the German beers are good, but then you said bureaucratic.
Oh, yes, that as well. Definitely appreciate that.
Because that's my problem when I go to Germany. That's my problem. I'm just drinking that beautiful Pilsner, I can't.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So, it's the just like residency stuff and all that. That's like the legal stuff to get straightened out.
Same as here in Spain. Exactly the same situation. Exactly the same. Anyway, so onto the cattle business, as you said. You're here to discuss your new album Terrasite, which is out very soon on the 12th of May. I bet you cannot wait to get this out, right?
Yeah, it's our written during the pandemic, and recorded at the tail end of it, and just want to kind of move on. And we kind of felt like, obviously with the pandemic, we got a little cheated on being able to promote Death Atlas.
Yeah.
But we did get a couple, including this last tour we did at the end of the year that was with the Monomarth, Obituary, and Carcass. We did get an opportunity to promote that. We did your festivals in Europe this past summer. And so we actually ended up being able to promote it a decent amount. Not as much as we'd like, of course, but, considering the world conditions.
Yeah.
We'll have a whole bunch of new songs, and we're going to be on the road starting immediately before the album release, May 11th in the United States, with a Dark Funeral, 200 Stab Wounds, and Blackberry. So we'll be doing that, and then we're working on some more international stuff for the late summer, early fall. And then we have we have a U.S. Headliner coming up at the end of the year. Awesome. And then probably early next year, more international stuff.
Awesome. No wonder you need to be near an airport in Berlin. So let's go back to the album. You, to quote, said, after a record like Death Atlas, your 2019 album, you have to make a turn. What did you mean by this? And with that in mind, how do you think you're evolving from album to album and as the band as a whole?
I think what I meant by that was, that album had such a sense of finality to it. Taking any world events out of the equation, it was still like okay, now what do we do? Sort of thing. So we really had to be on one end. Travis is like him with lyrics and concepts. He really had to kind of refigure and retool and not dig as in he had a hard time, but he just really had to think things through thoroughly on all that, how he wanted to present the next concepts for the record. And musically, I think we all kind of got together early on in the writing process, and we're just like, well, what do we want to achieve with this? We're X amount of albums in, we're not going to start doing calypso parts or anything, but how do we want to stay within what we're doing, but not just stagnate and be like, oh, here, we found this one thing we can do, let's beat it into the ground, but while still retaining your style. You know what I mean? It's that's why I was kind of confused by people like, oh, this sounds like your band. I'm like, yeah, because we have a style, and this other band has their style or whatever, but within that, you can innovate on your own trajectory that you're on, and just try to keep perfecting what you do. And I think in our case, we went from Death Atlas, which was a little more sprawling, as far as like the songs themselves. We had these little bumper kind of ambient elements or ambient sort of, parts, and then the big outro. And so with this record, we kind of wanted to just a little more straightforward, like song. Oh, even though technically, musically wise, the running time for this record is longer than Death Atlas.
Right. Okay.
Which I thought was fine because we went and said that, and then we were looking later, we're like, oh, son of a bitch, it's actually longer. Oh, screw that, So, but yeah, it's a little more song, bang, 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 bang.
Yeah.
There is, a sort of, I don't want to say intro, but kind of like a intro track before the last one, which is actually longer than any other song we've ever done.
Yeah.
It was an actual, not like a noise or ambient thing, but an actual song.
Yeah.
In the closing track. So, but I mean, it wouldn't have ended up being that long if we'd have found that there was fat to cut off it, or we were just like, oh, why would we do this? We would not write a song intentionally just to be that length.
Yeah.
So, we got through it not get through it, but like got everything together in the studio, had like the intro, outro, and then actually listened to it as a whole. And we're just like, okay, it wasn't something, where we felt that we had to just lengthen it for whatever reason. It was like, oh, this actually works, even though it's like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
So we were pleased with that. And I think the turn is just being more, when I say straightforward, I'm not referring necessarily to the composition of the songs.
No, sure.
But it's just more like, okay, let's just, like I said, once again, despite having a 10-minute long last song, cut the fat and just like, boom, here's 10 tracks, do with them what you like and everything.
Yeah.
So I was just going to say that, like, and then, I mean, I can only speak personally as far as what my function in the band is, for one of them, but I really got, whereas Death Atlas had like myself and Bell, the other guitar player, there's obviously stuff where I'm layering or I'm doing a melody or he's doing this different chord voicing and what I'm doing, and we're all kind of call responsible here and there. There was most of Death Atlas was us playing kind of the same thing, just doubling up. Whereas this record, Terrasite, I think probably 2/3 of the record, if not more, maybe like 75%, him and I are playing completely different things.
Right.
They're all hopefully complementary of one another.
Yeah.
But we lock up on some of the heavy stuff, and then maybe if there's super tight single string stuff, we'll lock up on that. But a lot of the other stuff is like him doing a different chord voicing from what I'm doing, or me, I'm inverting this while he's doing that, adding add 9 or whatever, or me doing this sort of ambient kind of ethereal sounding layer over the top of what he's doing or whatever. So it's like, I think on the strings, at least guitar wise, we really wanted to kind of make it like, well, there's 2 guitars. Let's really take advantage, instead of just like doubling everything.
It's going straight into that tech word, right?
Yeah. And then what's that? I'm sorry.
Straight into that tech word, tech metal. It's like, the detail.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, in the mix wise, like we really wanted everyone wanted to hear more of Ollie's bass, not just low end in general, but his bass guitar. So there was a lot of work, or just like very close attention put into EQing things. So it sat in at the perfect place. It popped when it needed to. And there was just this really satisfying, like kind of rumble just running throughout. And, I think it's great. I think his place in the mix is awesome. And it really, of course, serves to also make the guitars sound that much better, so you have the end result to me, like tonally for all the strings, is relative to Death Atlas, it's a little more, I don't want to just say warm, but like richer and cabin-like.
Yeah.
If that makes any sort of sense.
I like it. No, I can conjure that out. I like it. Now, up to now, you've treated us to one track, We Eat Our Young. Why did you choose this as the first track and for people to grab a taste of what's to come? Why that track? I mean, I love it. I've heard the album. It's brilliant.
Well, so they can be really annoyed when all the things they said, oh, I'm glad they're not doing this, comes next. Sorry, folks. Wow, really, the whole album's going to be like this, right? Mm-hmm, sure. Have fun with single number 2. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. So what's coming out next?
Something.
All right.
Another song.
Good. Soon, I hope.
Yeah, soon. I actually have to. Because we're doing like we do with We Eat Our Young. There's song and video same time, song and video, so on. So I actually have to, when we're done here, I have to look at the hopefully final version of the video for the next.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's well, okay. To kind of to rewind back to what I was saying just slightly. Yes, like we Eat Our Young, we chose because it's like we were kind of like, well, what's going to be the first single? And, I think to a certain extent, it's not that we were reacting, but we're just like, okay, people have kind of become either used to or kind of like saying like, oh, let me guess, there's going to be this part where Travis does his goblin thing and then this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like, hold on now. Other songs, yes.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, We Eat Our Young is just a boom. There's banger. There's like it's savagery the entire time. Sure, let's do that one, Yeah. And so we released that out of the gate. We played it back in November, December on that Amon Amarth tour. And it went over really well. So, we'd chosen that previous. It wasn't like the tester for that. But we released that one first. Then we got, the next few songs. And there's going to be, 1, 2, 4 more singles technically.
Right. Okay.
Which will be released coming up, one in a couple weeks, I think, maybe.
Right.
And then one day of release. And then there's a couple that'll be like, maybe like later in the year, maybe summer, and then one in the fall or early next year. So.
Did you call this album a somber panic attack?
Yes.
Why? I love that.
Because it was like I think a couple months ago, it was the time to rewrite the bio, guys, or whatever for like this record be more applicable to that. And so I don't know, I took an afternoon or whatever and did several little iterations of what I wanted to send, based on these questions that they were kind of putting out there. And one of them was like, how do you compare this record, the feeling sonically, the collective impression, of the music? And that was kind of my like, well, there's this sort of heaviness, emotional heaviness to it. In this kind of like defeated but dreamy sounding kind of thing. But then Dave McGraw is under us playing just like a machine gun. So it's like there's this sort of, I don't want to say hyper, but just kind of like panic, kind of sort of chemical panic kind of thing with the drums really just pushing right there. But then there's all sort of slight, like swimmy headed, like ethereal thing going on. So to me, that I can only speak personally, this is very sort of similar to having that kind of panic attack thing where it's like your heart's racing, but you feel like you're made of liquid and it's kind of fuck, so that's kind of why I said that. I mean,
I'm gonna go back and listen to the album this afternoon and just picture that now. I'm gonna get into that. I'm gonna get into that mode,
Yeah.
So let's talk about, the themes on the album. Are we talking the same old Cattle Decapitation themes of like, the human issues and animal issues, or have we moved on from that? I mean, what's going on lyrically?
I think it's a lot more personal, I think, this time. The animal issue thing, that was a huge, well, not huge, but a large component lyrically and sort of theme of the band up until, I would say, around Karma Bloody Karma, which was like 2006, I think. Yeah, 2006. And then Harvest Floor, Harvest Floor to present, I think there's been a lot more of just this sort of evolution of like kind of anti-human, personal responsibility kind of stuff all wrapped up. And then Travis's sort of evolving takes on that.
Yeah.
With the newest record, Death Atlas is like, here's the end of everything. Here's the world charred and this, charcoal. Okay, well, there's like on our little promotional thing for the record, we put life finds a way. Well, that refers to, because after we're seeing the cover and maybe song titles and lyrical content, is like, well, there's rebirth, but it's this death metal appropriate rebirth of this horrible creature, which is this sort of cockroach human hybrid that's just further devouring the earth and furthering destruction and all that. So, how many more albums?
Which your long-standing collaborator Wes Ben Scower, is it?
Yeah.
He did it for you. I mean, does he do all your, I mean, he's done a lot of stuff for you, but I mean, do you let him crack on with that, or do you let him have free reign, or do you stick him with what you want, or?
Well, he and Travis are the big collaborators on that. The
Right.
rest of us, Travis is like kind of rolls out, do the band chat or copy email, like, oh, this is what I'm kind of thinking.
Right.
What do you guys think and all that? And he goes, I'm going to send it to Wes. Okay. And then Wes will get back to him, and they'll just kind of ping pong back and forth with, executing it in a certain way.
Yeah.
And then we all kind of nervously, even though he's never failed us, nervously sit around kind of like, okay, what are we going to get? And then he'll send us this, like a rough draft with like, we'll do minor revisions to it.
Yeah.
Every time we're just like, it's maybe not exactly what you're expecting.
Yeah.
But it's like,
he nails it.
Like with most great artists, or I shouldn't say most, like all great artists.
Yeah.
They surprise you, and you're delighted in a way that you never expected to be.
Yeah.
And
the album name Terrasite, can you explain that? Because I think I remember I read it what it was, but can you explain?
Yeah, Travis came up with that in a way where it's like, Terrasite, this sort of parasite on the earth, or earth eater. So it's this thing, referring to humans as always. And then this new sort of creature that's introduced on the cover of the record, saying it's this thing that is literally just continuing to, exploit whatever resources, or, just eat its way through the earth. So there's this whole race of this is me speculating on the full breadth of what his concept is. Cool. But like, this race of things, being set forth in the earth, emerging from these sort of Pompeii-style body human, so I don't know what the term would be, but just, crusty up, dried up humans, exploding out like a cocoon almost, exploding out of that, and then just furthering sort of levels of destruction and all that. Yeah. So since it is a rebirth, that kind of is the snooze button or the get out of jail free card. Hey, now we can move forward. The paint we let the paint dry in the room. We painted ourselves in the corner, and we're skipping over the top to get out of there. So, But I mean, at the end of the day, it's like every band, if we're to be as fortunate as we are that we've been able to be around this long and have people still be interested. I mean, if of course, conceptual basis stuff. Yeah. And there's like a running theme and a story. I mean, you got to do something.
Yeah, for sure. Now, if you know, but it's no secret that yourself and vocalist Travis are vegetarians. And at the start, what made you go for this juxtaposition? I'm sure you've told this story many times, not to me though. 25 or so years ago, how did you arrive at the direction you wanted to go with? For myself, I mean, I've been, it's 2023. I've been vegetarian for like 24 years, something like that. I think it was more like, and I preface this with I grew up on a farm. Right. But that had absolutely zero to do with anything like that. Okay. Like people will assume like, you saw the horrors of, I'm like, no. Yeah. Right. We're a small family farm, mostly corn, soybeans raised. We had cattle and stuff. That was my dad's big interest outside of, the farm part of it, or the corn and soybeans part of it. But nothing I saw there, like, or experienced growing up led me to that, Yeah. I think it was just a conscious decision on my part to try to be, like meat wasn't that like an important part of my existence, despite, having the best stuff available to me growing up all the time, all that crap. Yeah. And it's just like, if I could do anything that's going to be less impactful, even though it's some very minor, relatively thing like that, then why not, Yeah, sure. I think with the band too, like, like say Travis is probably a vegetarian for just as long, I mean, probably a few years, couple few years longer than that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But for him, I think, I mean, I can't really, we grew up opposite sides of the country and, different, not dramatically different backgrounds, but different. Yeah. Yeah. And, for him, it just seems like maybe like with me, like music, it's like, well, Carcass was vegetarian, that was that sort of an thing. Yeah. Yeah. And like, Barney, Napalm and stuff like that. And it's, prior to, for me, prior to Carcass, or I don't say prior to Carcass, but like in addition to Carcass, like I heard about
usually people, only musicians aside from the McCartneys or whatever that I heard about being vegetarian were like, oh, there's these like Krishna dudes, like New York hardcore guys, or super, super like militant vegan straight edge bands and stuff like that my friends would be hear about, like Earth Crisis, or there was a band called Vegan Reich for a while. All that I know, right? Yeah. And I'm sure that guy owns a compassionate butcher shop now, because that seems to be the way of the world. Or maybe he's still holding strong. Who knows? I think I was hearing about it from there, and then Carcass, obviously, and then Barney and all that. But it just for Travis, I'm thinking that might have been sort of the same thing got on his radar, and then especially from where he grew up in Southern California as well, or not as well, but he grew up in Southern California. So it was one of the places in the United States where it was immediately a lot easier than other places to have that.
Yeah.
Not that that's the ease of that swayed him in any way, but it's like, it's an impactful thing you can do, that requires, especially these days, very little, if not any effort at all.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that, especially in Europe as well. So the name Cattle Decapitation, where did that come from? Coming from that position of veganism, vegetarianism. I know you've dabbled in both. How did you get to that name? I mean, because you tell people, I'm speaking to this band. That's what I told my kids. I'm speaking to Cattle Decapitation. Great. One of my sons is a big death metal fan. Great. Did you know they were vegetarians? No. What? They couldn't get over it. So how did what? Tell me about it. Come on.
That's funny. Okay, the earliest version of the band, 96 or whatever. Two of those guys were in the band The Locust.
Yeah.
And there was a third fellow.
With Gabe as well, right? That's right.
Yes, it was Gabe. And that I'll finish. That reminds me.
Of course.
Something else you were talking about earlier to finish with the thought. So anyway, Gabe and Dave Astor, they were in The Locust, original two Cattle members aside from Scott Miller, this third fellow.
Yeah.
Locust had a song called Cattle Mutilation.
Right.
And their idea with Cattle was like, since they were both metal guys originally, or at least that was where they sprang from.
Yeah.
It's like, Locusts are more kind of grind, crazy what the Locust does. We want to do like a straight death metal, grind sort of thing. So this will be our side band. We can have that sort of get that out of our system.
Yeah.
Still be able to do Locust. And then apparently, I'm just going to assume that there was a lot of like weed being smoked and, hangout sessions, and all that, where it's like, hey, what about instead of mutilation, cattle decapitation? Sick, bro. So that was the original. I'm just guessing. The original, how that name came out. And Travis joined the band maybe 3 months in, because the original third guy disappeared.
Right.
Yeah, just disappeared. Stopped showing up for everything. So Travis joined, and I remember him saying that, like, early on in the history of the band, he was like, that name is pretty lame, bro. Can we, they were going to try to, like, figure out something else, but they just kept playing shows under that name. So all of a sudden you're dug in. You know what I mean? You're like, okay, we've committed. People know us as this. People are starting to show up to see us, not just because we're the Locust side project or whatever.
Sure.
So then it kind of got ingrained. And then once you put out that first Human Jerky, the first record came out, you committed. So although it does sound like a name that someone who doesn't listen to death metal at all would just make up trying to think of something ridiculous. That's pretty much it,
Yeah. So with that in mind, what's the craziest thing anyone has ever said about the band? There must be some mad stuff over the years.
It's funny. There's like, I don't want to say lately, but like since, the advent of, I don't say just YouTube comments or message boards or all this stuff, like Reddit sort of ideas. It's just like this sort of belief, and I'm not saying this is a common thing at all.
No.
But just you see little things pop up here and there that are like, they're vegetarian just for the attention.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or that we're like, at this, maybe they have a point. And by that, maybe, I mean, they do have a point is, well, how, if they're so concerned about the environment and everything, why do they tour? Why are they a band? Why do they put out records?
Right.
Why do they have if all you do is, that's just waste. That's just waste. I'm like,
yeah. Okay.
Well, that's not untrue, but I mean, otherwise, then you have no band because you have nothing to say.
Of course, we won't listen to those guys. But did you ever get people taking you the wrong way? Like,
thinking that we're like super advocating
animal heads to a gig or something like that.
Early on, I think like maybe not to that extent, but maybe early 2000s when we were starting to really like back then it was the be on the road all the time. You have to be constantly in people's minds, even though that worked very counterproductively. Being on every tour, people tend to get annoyed. So we were just on the road all the time. And whether people didn't know our background or really just it was like, oh, I saw this brutal name, I gotta go see this band. So people would like be like, yeah, man, kill them damn cows, or just stuff like that, just kind of like yokalisms and stuff. And we're like, well, don't even get engaged, don't even just be like,
yeah, that's hilarious.
Cool, bro. If you try to explain yourself, it's already too late.
Yeah, that's hilarious, man. So touring wise, you've touched upon it. What's happening to support the album the rest of 2023? I've kind of gone through this, haven't we? So you're going out like now in the States with Dart Funeral, who I saw last week with Cannibal Corpse, which was great. What else is happening? You coming back over here for anything? What's happening with regards to festivals?
That we're working on because we did do all the festivals like last year. I think we hadn't done like a festival run in Europe since like 2016, which is crazy. But until last summer, and then the last actual tour we did was late 2019. Which is okay. But we did a bunch of like most of the main fests this last summer, and then we did a bunch of one-off club dates, which went shockingly well because you know how club dates are during fest season. They're usually renowned for being terrible because everyone's at the fest or something. Well, we lucked out, and most, if not all, of those shows were just absolutely great. So we got a lot of mileage out of that. But like a lot of other bands this past summer, despite the fest being great for us and those one-off shows being great, we had a lot of logistical problems, both just randomness of the universe, and then varying parties being involved, or not involved, but varying, fingers to point on that. So we kind of got a little soured for a bit, and we're like, okay, well, let's give it. I mean, I know we have that album coming out next May. But let's give it a rest for a bit, and we'll see. We'll keep a line out. We're not going to write off the territory because it's the territory. So let's just keep a line out, but let's not be jumping all over ourselves to go back immediately. So we kind of held to that for quite a while, and then we were thinking about like the whole tour cycle and everything, and we're like, well, let's just try to talk to a couple people because we parted ways with our booking agency that we had this past summer. And but we'd had interest from a few others that are bigger names, so we decided to kind of open those lines of communication, and they're right now trying to put stuff together for just maybe like a regular Euro run for us, but a lot of UK dates, a little more heavily weighted on UK dates in Ireland than normal tours. But then another like maybe 11 days in UK. 12 days in mainland or something like that.
Okay,
I don't know.
Good to know.
So that's going to be probably, I would imagine, maybe beginning of next year.
Okay, cool. We can
not
wait.
100%, but it's happening. It's definitely happening. We approved it and everything like that.
Cool, that's great. Now, I just want to, because we haven't got much time, I want to quickly pull you back, and I don't want to rush the conversation, but we haven't got a lot of time. Is to talk about Gabe as well, because you want to just quickly push on that.
Yeah, when you mentioned like concept and lyric writing before, and I mentioned there's like a big personal element to it. What I meant to that, I'm sorry I got distracted, but what I meant by that was, the record is about, this sort of continuing, there's like population issues and this sort of, the Terrasite adaptation is the first opening track where it's talking about this sort of new sort of life form overtaking the earth. But like later tracks, like Just Another Body, the closing track, that's a perfect example. Gabe passed away right before we started to record the record, maybe a couple weeks before. And Travis still had a few songs to write lyrics for. So that whole event, and then also why we're actually in the studio. Trevor from Black Dahlia passing away too.
Yeah.
That was obviously, Gabe we'd known. Gabe brought me into the band, into Cattle. And then Trevor we'd toured with multiple times, and he would always come out and see us when he was in Detroit or when he was living in New York or blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Always was a champion and a good friend, and so I think those two things really had a sort of ladder during the course of writing the album impact on everything.
Sure.
And so that Gabe's, the album is dedicated to Gabe.
Yeah.
And it just that's when I say like there was a far more like kind of emotional content. And since all this happened prior to recording, yes, here's lyrics being written about or sort of referencing this, and but it definitely had an effect on the mood. And I don't mean that necessarily like the whole recording was somber or anything like that, but it was just very much when you have something or someone and something like that happen in your life, then it's like there's a lot more reflection going on beyond just the normal critique of when you're recording and being hard on yourself in that regard, and everyone else being very exacting. Cool. It's just sort of like sort of reflective existential kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah.
So that definitely had an effect on things.
So very, very quickly, I need one track to play next. Maybe one track that sums the band up the best, not the new single, because I've played that already. What do you want to play? What's from your back catalogue? What one track?
Oh, from our whole back catalog. What would that sum up?
One track.
Oh, geez.
What's your favorite track? One. Shout one out. What's in your four?
I don't know. I'm terrible with these things. Past song. I really like the title track off of Death Atlas.
Yeah,
I think it sums up a lot. But then there's Gardeners of Eden off of Harvest Floor.
Right, I'll chuck both of them in. Say no more. They're both going on next. Okay. Now, one last question. It's a tough one. I always ask this question to my American friends, but especially you living in Europe. Who's got metal better, the States or Europe?
That's funny. Like if I went through I don't say my playlist, but stuff I listen to and look at the point of origin for most of the bands I listen to. I mean,
come on. One continent, go.
No.
I can see you weighing it up now. Okay. West Coast, East Coast. Okay. Go on.
Oh, that's it. Midwest always.
Yeah.
I would say most of what's on my playlist is European based.
Yeah. Okay.
I listen to shit ton of
I feel like there's a book coming up.
But thank you. There is a really, as much as I know it gets poo-pooed, because it doesn't come from upper middle class kids from Norway. There's a lot of really good American black metal bands that are upper middle class people from suburban America.
Cloak being one of my favorites. Cloak's great.
Or whatever.
Black Braid as well.
Yeah, Black Braid.
You're going out with.
Josh, they're going out.
I'm going to have to finish it there, mate, because we're run out of time. Okay. Josh, thanks for joining me on the show. Much appreciated. Good luck with the release and the tours to follow. Hope to see you next year.
Thank you. Absolutely.